Hello, my name is Dale Maley. In this video today, we're going to talk about how to design and make wooden hinges and wooden hasps. You might ask, why would one want hinges and hasps made from wood? Well, if you've made a very distinctively designed and made wood box, wooden hinges, they do add a very distinctive characteristic to the box. Now, there's several existing YouTube videos on how to make different types of wood hinges. My video will include some design tips as well as one method to make wooden hinges and wooden hasp. And as you can see in the photograph, these are actually very nice looking hinges, so they might accent a project that you have by adding a nice additional feature. Now, the first thing design-wise for wood hinges, given the box size of your project, you need to figure out what size of hinges look right, the relative scale between the hinge size and the box size. Now, I use SketchUp drafting program to kind of lay them out and see which ones look right. You could use whatever your favorite drafting program is, or you could even hand sketch your box and the size of the hinges. And this example shown here is a relatively large box because it's 33 inches long, 16 inches deep, and 18 inches high. So to get hinges that kind of look right aesthetically, I came out with hinges that are 3 3/8 wide and 7 1/4 tall. But if you got a smaller box, probably you want to scale those hinges down so they look right given the size of your box. Now, once you've figured out the overall width, height, and thickness of the hinges you want to make, you need to make some other key design decisions about the hinges. For example, you need to choose the teeth thickness. And these relatively large hinges, I've got 3/8 wide teeth. Then how much do you want the teeth to overlap? And I've got 3/4 of an inch chosen for this larger hinge. Then you want to make sure the male ends on the top, or you want male ends on the top piece on each end so they look nice. It kind of looks odd if you have a male on, say, the left-hand side and a female on the right-hand side. So if you follow that practice, that means your bottom hinge will have one less tooth. So in this example, we have 5 teeth on the top hinge, but just 4 teeth on the bottom hinge. We also decided to make this hinge 3/4 of an inch thick. It's a relatively large hinge. If you're working with smaller boxes and smaller hinges, you might want to make your hinges less than 3/4 of an inch. Now, if you take the wood hinge and you rotate it so it's at a 90-degree angle, as shown in the upper left image, that looks almost the same as a finger joint wood box does, shown in the lower right. The only difference is you've rounded the ends and you have a pin, in my case a brass pin, going through the hinges. So I'm going to utilize the same method that you use to make finger joint boxes, and that method's been around a long time. It's basically a key indexing fixture. We'll look at that in a second. Now, I use the table saw to cut out the teeth. You could use a router table as well. Now, before we use the key indexing fixture, we do want rounded ends on our hinges. And for the blank, I would suggest you make the blank a little bit bigger than your finished hinge size. Then you can always saw it on the table saw to the exact size that you need. So we need to round over those ends. What I do is I do that on the router table using a round over bit. Now, if you already have a fixture for your table saw to make box joints, all you have to do is modify that fixture for the hinge application. If not, just make a new fixture. It's very simple, as you can see in the picture. The key shown in the bottom left, that key width has to match your hinge thickness. So in this example, we want 3/8 inch wide keys, so that key is 3/8 of an inch wide. You also have to use a dado blade with the right thickness, In this case, to get 3/8, it took the two outer cutters plus one center blade. That gave 3/8. And you basically saw, then you index the piece with using the key, saw again, index, and keep going till you're done. You might want to use a sacrificial piece of, say, 3/16 inch thick Luan plywood to prevent tear out when the saw blades exit the piece that you are cutting. Now, back in 2011, I made an animation showing the concept involved using that key index fixture for making box joints. And since it's the same basic idea for wood hinges, we're going to replay that video so you have a good idea of the indexing concept. Now, every woodworking technique or process has its own bad news and good news. The bad news about the table saw indexing method: it takes quite a few trial and error test pieces before you get the setting just right, because you want the joint to be not too loose and not too tight. The good news, though, is once you go through the setup and you have everything set properly, the setup will remain consistent while you saw your pieces involved with your project. Now, after you have the teeth made in your hinges, you're ready to drill the holes for the brass pin. But you need to leave some clearance between the two hinges so as they fold, that those rounded end doesn't rub against the opposing hinge. So what I normally do is use a little piece of paper or thin cardboard, and you can see two white ones here in my setup. I'll put those in there to give just enough spacing, which gives enough clearance. Then I'll take this setup to the drill press, and I'm ready to drill the holes. Now, drilling the hinges can be a little tricky. I would suggest you use an approach where you drill from both ends. So start and drill maybe halfway in one direction, then flip your piece over, and then drill from the other end, which will then connect up the two holes. If you try doing this in a single drilling, you may end up with your drill bit wandering, and when it exits on the other side, it will not be on the center on the opposite side. That's unattractive when you're looking at the hinge. They cause some problems functionally also with the hinge open and closing. So probably the best bet is to drill from both ends and then connect up the drillings, and that gives you your best chance. Now that you have the hinges done, it's time to work on the hasp. And for this rather large size block we're using as an example, you go through the same process where you want to figure out the right size of the hinge in proportion to the box. So in this example, I ended up with a 4-inch wide hasp that was 8 inches tall. And this customer wanted to use a large wooden lock on his box. So the actual drawing of the wood lock is shown here. That's how I used to check to make sure that the hasp itself was large enough. And I'm going to use a brass rod for the hasp. The process for making the hasp is very similar to making the hinge, with a couple of exceptions. When the lower hinge, or part of the hasp, when it folds down, I had to at least put some undercut in there to have enough clearance so when that top piece swings down, it doesn't hit the bottom piece down there as well. And the size of the opening for the hasp has to be a little longer than what you might think, because you have to allow for the swing radius when it comes down. Now in my case, I used a 3/16 inch diameter brass rod. That's pretty hard to bend that, so I used a wood fixture, and after I got it bent to the proper shape, I epoxied it into the red oak in this project. Now let's take a look at a couple of red oak hinges and just get an idea of how well they work. Now here's two red oak hinges shown here, and they're in the straight position. We can look through and see the brass rod used with a pin. Then in terms of folding, these hinges really work pretty nice. They're not too loose, they're not too tight. So that gives you an idea of these hinges really work very nice when you get the setting just right for making the keys or the teeth. The other one, similar. Where it's fully closed, 180, then closed the other way. So they really are nice looking hinges using this process. Now here's a photograph for a customer. He had two boxes, so I had to make up two sets of hinges, 2 hinges per box, so there's 4 of them. Then he wanted wooden hasp as well, so there's 2 of those, 1 for each box. And he was very pleased when he received those to add them onto his custom-made wood box. So, in summary, this video explains how to design and make both wooden hinges and wooden hasps. I hope this video helps you on your projects. I hope you enjoyed the video, and please subscribe. Thank you.